You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the chrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the Iron Dome. 2 men enter, 1 man leave. No, that's not the way it works. We just leave one at a time on the StreamYard, so we're not doing that. Guys, welcome to the Chris Voss Show. For 16 years, we've been at the Chris Voss Show. Over 2,200 episodes, damn it. And if you haven't gone back and listened to every single one of them, there will be a test. So make sure you listen intently to every show. Today we had an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking to Colonel Damon Wells. He has written a newest book that came out December 1st, 2024. I'm still in February. I'm just denying that December is existing right now at this pace, and it's winning. His newest book is called The Leadership Incompetence Index. He must have wrote about me. Root causes, red flags, and remedies for learning leaders. We're going to get into his insights in his books and his experience in the Army. You may have heard of it. It's a big military establishment that's been around since, well, he may know the exact date. Beginning of time, let's just say that. Colonel Damon Wells is a lifelong student of leadership and author of the aforementioned book. With over 3 decades as an active duty officer, Damon has led teams in high-pressure environments that has served as real-world leadership laboratories for refining his theories and practices. He's commanded organizations up to the brigade level and served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Korea, the Baltics, and now in Stuttgart, Germany. Am I saying that right? Stuttgart. You'd think as a 3rd, 4th generation German I would know that, but I don't. And he's the Deputy Chief of Staff for the U.S. Africa Command, and now he's serving on the Chris Voss Show. No, he's not serving us, he's just showing up. Drawing on his extensive military experience, he created the Ballistic Leadership Framework and an innovative approach that integrates cutting-edge research in psychology, neuroscience, and complexity theory with proven battle-tested principles. Currently, he's focused on several leadership writing research projects while making the most of his final 6 months in Europe. There you go. Welcome to the show. How are you, Mr. Wells?
I am doing great, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for your service. Give us your .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, so I'm on X it's at Some Leadership, SUM Leadership, summaryleadership.com, and of course, my book's on Amazon.
There you go. You can pick it up wherever fine books are sold. So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside that new book?
So the book, it's called Incompetence Index. And, I think about leadership a lot. I've been thinking about leadership since I joined the Army. And it seemed to me over the last few years that we pretend like everybody's got tons of potential and we're all pretty good at leadership. But if you look at the research, if you look at studies that try to determine are the leaders in this organization good, all the surveys come back and it's anywhere between 50 to 70% of most organizations don't think their leaders are that great. I mean, they're probably okay and they're probably paying the bills, but they're not that great. So I wanted to take it from the other side and make the assumption that most of us are incompetent in one way or the other. We all show some, like you can read the book, there's 11 kind of archetypes in there. And most of us have exhibited something like those incompetent traits at one point or the other. Yeah. So I just wanted to be a little more honest about it and say, look, acknowledge incompetence. Let's go through the root causes of incompetence, see if we can identify it in yourself and maybe in your leaders, and then go from there as a sort of a learning point.
Here you go. Can we use this to help the people on Twitter or X or whatever it is called this week, bankruptcy? There seems to be a lot of incompetent people there. So anyway,
I hope they all buy the book. Yes.
There you go. Buy the book, folks. There you go. So let's get into it. You talk about there's 10 most common types of ineffective leaders and stuff that are inefficient to the dangerously malevolent. I don't know why it's Friday. My brain is broken.
It's Friday the 13th, man.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm malfunctioning at this point.
And there's drones falling out of the sky. There's all kinds of weird shit
Oh yeah.
going on.
Well, I didn't do it. I'm just saying. So give us a rundown. Tease us out a few of these, if you would. We want people to buy the book, of course.
Okay, so we go from like the most benign to the most malevolent. Just a disorganized leader. And the way I structure these chapters is I'll have a little inner monologue of, what is this leader thinking about? And the disorganized leader's got Post-it notes everywhere, keeps getting distracted by calendars and projects that they've got on the back burner. You've got, and I kind of exhibit this trait most of any of them, and that's the visionary without execution, the guy with just brilliant ideas all the time, but can't really, take the time to put anything into execution. You've got indecisive leaders. You got fearful leaders who are, probably okay, but they're just too scared to take a giant step and to do something a little bit challenging. Inflexible leaders, micromanagers, autocratic leaders, narcissistic leaders. And then at the top of the scale, you have the dark triad leader, which is the narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, which is, it's called incompetence. What that really is malevolence in that, everything they do is about themselves with no empathy, right?
Oh. Is there degrees to that, though? Because, masculinity usually tends to pick up on the traits of some of those. And I think it depends on how deep you go. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think within each archetype, you've got sort of a scale, like a level 3 absent leader.
Okay.
Can rank above a level 5, just depending on the severity of the the traits they have. So it's broad. It's more of a kind of a think about yourself book than it is an actual classification scale. But yeah, you're right.
Because I think there's a little bit of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you studied this as well. But I think a little bit of psychopath, dark triad traits, psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and a little bit of narcissism is kind of okay. I think sometimes to be a leader, you almost have to have a little bit of narcissism, don't you? You have to think that people give a shit what your opinion is.
Well, you have to be bold enough in your own ideas to push them forward, because people are always going to try to hold you back, right? So there's that balance. So a little bit of, like, I kind of couch that in the book, and I've written articles that are on medium.com about, there are a lot of really powerful, successful, motivational leaders that have some of these dark traits that if they went just a little bit further, they would not be a good person anymore. But they've managed to leverage those dark traits to make whatever they want to do, to make it really, really great.
I try and balance mine. I try and find a healthy dial-in medium. I'm not sure it's working, but I'll let the audience decide.
It's got you this far.
Yeah, that's true. And I haven't been in prison yet for anything I've done, so that's a good thing. But I kind of operate in an operational awareness thing where I don't do anything to get arrested. No, that's kind of my thing. I watch Cops a lot. That way I know how not to get
all the tricks.
Yeah, I know all the tricks. No robbery, no murder, no killing, all those things that are, I had to finally give up after all these years.
That's right.
The pillaging, all that sort of stuff.
All that stuff.
All that medieval shit. So, you come from the military, and tell us a little bit about your upbringing. What made you want to join the military? What was some of your influences growing up, et cetera, et cetera?
So, my background, none of my family members were in the military, so I had no exposure to it growing up. And I was kind of a rebel. I played in bands and failed my way through a few years of college before I did anything substantial. But I don't know. I think it was the Gulf War. I remember seeing that on TV. That's before I joined. I remember seeing that, and something was just like, man, that's something I want to do. I felt like I should be there for that. So that was kind of the first stirring. And then after I failed my way through a few years of college, I was working in a hospital as an EKG tech, and I, just made a decision one day. Yep, I'm doing this. And I think just I wouldn't have guessed it at a younger age, but it's a pretty good fit for my personality. I'm not a very good rule follower, except in certain circumstances. So if you leave it up to me, I probably won't follow the rules. But if you put a little bit of boundary on me, I can do it. I can do it pretty well to an extent. So that got me into the Army. And like you read up front, I've been a lot of places all over the planet. Iraq a couple times, Afghanistan. But like I said, it's a good fit, and I think I'm a little bit of an anomaly in that I because we talk about it in the book, but there's personality characteristics, right? And I'm a little bit of a low conscientiousness, low organized, but more on the creative side as my personality traits. So it's got me this far, being sort of the anti-model of what a successful Army officer looks like as far as personality traits go. But I managed to leverage that by coming up with the creative solutions that nobody's thinking of, fixing the problems that people don't see yet. So like I said, got me this far, but I'm about 2 years out from retiring. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
That's kind of interesting. You're more on the creative side. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that till a few years ago when I started studying all this stuff and doing a lot of research into the 5-factor model for personalities, and looking into it, looking at myself, and then doing the reading that said, well, the correlation between successful military officers and personality styles is usually extroversion and conscientiousness. So very task and sort of checklist oriented and being able to talk to people. And I'm not either one of those. So kind of an anomaly. I mean, of course, I'm not the only one, but it's just an interesting facet that I don't fit that model.
So in the military, you don't do the full jacket colonel thing where you're yelling at people, calling them maggots. You're like, let's do a task list instead of, only weirdos come from Texas or something. I don't know what that joke is. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't do that one.
That was the only thing I could come up with mind. But what a great movie that was. Yeah.
It was a great movie.
I do this every morning when I'm sitting on the toilet too. I live in a world of shit. I think that's the line. I don't know. A great movie.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It was so amazing. That guy was supposed to just be an advisor on that movie, and with his military experience.
R. Lee Ermey, right?
You're the guy.
Is that his name?
Yeah. I think so. I don't know. But Full Metal Jacket. You'll never forget that.
Yeah.
What's funny?
The model drill instructor.
Yeah, I only know the first half of the movie because that's the only half you watch because it's the funnest. And after that,
that's true. Yeah, the second half is kind of.
I have no idea.
It's okay.
Yeah. So some of the other aspects of the book, you talked about 11 different, I think, leader types, archetypes. Now, was that included in the 10 most common types of ineffective leaders, or did I?
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 11. I started with 10. I ended up with 11.
You talk about the levels. 11. You talk about the levels of incompetence in 4 categories that you've indexed. There's the benign, to those who create toxic work environments, and I've seen a lot of those. Is the 4 categories part of what we talked about with the dark triad traits, or?
No, it's just kind of a rough categorization of take the 11 total and just categorize them into, level 0 through 3 is kind of your very benign levels. So disorganized through absent leader, probably not causing a lot of harm, but not maximally effective. And then, of course, the 4th, the highest level, includes dark triad and narcissist leaders and people who are probably really proficient, but are bad people in that they have these negative characteristics.
Definitely. It's all about them. I love malignant narcissist
That's right.
leaders. They're great. You talk about red flags and warning signs and how to identify warning signs and prevent dysfunction within teams and organizations. Are those red flags and warning signs a reflection of, analyzing if one had poor leadership, analyzing that?
Yeah. So I tried to make it simple for the reader. So first of all, you're reading the red flags. The red flags are, your typical warning signs. It's the behaviors and sometimes the language the leader you're looking at will use. So for the main reason is that I think what we do is we tend to just broadly characterize a leader as not good. Well, that person's no good. Well, let's take a closer look at the words than the language they're using. Let's take a look at the things they're doing that we don't like and see if we can put those in a bin so we can then classify, what is the dysfunction here? They're inflexible, they're a micromanager. And if you have that information, now I can use that information to start digging my way backwards to say, okay, what might be the evolutionary roots of behavior like this? What is the neuroscientific cause for them to behave like this? Really with the realization ultimately being that, they're perfectly normal human behaviors, just depends on the circumstances, but they're absolutely not abnormal. Most of the behavior we exhibit is there for a reason. It's just because we're human and, we're not perfect. And, any of us can exhibit these behaviors at one time or another, but it's the sort of aggregation of multiple repetitions of the same types of behavior that are indicative of some sort of negative trait.
Oh, wow. There you go. It's one of those things that people need to just really understand and figure out. I mean, I remember keeping a sign on my desk that said something to the effect of, just because you have the title, you have to, even though the title doesn't really mean anything that they give you, you have to earn your title every single day.
Yep.
And it was a reminder to me to try and suppress the dark triad tendencies as much as possible, but that I had to earn my position every day, even though I own the company, I was CEO. I still need to earn that in the eyes and minds of my folks. And there's a lot of great books that talk about leadership. A lot of great military books that talk about leadership. And our military really has some really incredible techniques that they use to build what I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the most competent and the most successful military in the world, I think, when it comes down to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
Everybody else looks at us and goes, we should be like them.
100%.
And
you know what? That's easy to say if you're American,
Mhm.
because it just feels right, and you get some indicators. But I've been to other countries, and whether it's Europe or the Middle East, and worked with the other armies, and it kind of dawned on me. It was a couple of years ago. I was in the Baltics working with some of the, those are very small nations,
Mhm.
working with their armies, and their armies are tiny, like microscopic. And I'm not, denigrating them in any way. They're just very small militaries. They're small countries.
Mhm.
And compared to ours, it kind of dawned on me then. I'm like, oh, now I see that America is truly the biggest, baddest army. Not just to flap our gums about it, but in scope, scale, technology, the way we raise our leaders, the way we emphasize, the cost of a soldier's life, like all of that stuff, the investment we put into making sure that soldiers have what they need, and we take care of the families, and we do all this stuff. Our military is truly phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. And I really didn't understand much about the structure. Over the last couple of years, we've had lots of military folks on. When I was writing my book, Beacons Leadership, my friend that I game with, Modern Warfare, is in the Army. And so he turned me on to the Beano Do. And I was wrapping the book in editing, but I was like, damn. And I really got into it looking through Beano Do, and I just fell in love with everything about it. And you come from the Army. Does that some of that play into the book, the techniques of the Beano Do?
Yeah, not this book, but it's in the two other books that I've got. It's phenomenal. That's part of the reason I put it in these other two books. Because the structure's there, and it's been developed and refined over decades, and it's applicable, it's practical. And it's one of those frameworks that people are reading all these, the newer leadership books, looking for these innovative frameworks, and it's there, man. It's all there. I go through the be, know, do model, the Army leadership requirements model, which kind of feeds off the be, know, do. There's just a lot of substance there that actually works. It's simple enough that you don't have to be a genius to figure it out. It's the military, right? And it's ultimately very practical, very applicable, very easy to understand. But you can dig layers deep into this thing, and that's I talked a little bit about neuroscience and evolution. I did that with all the Army leadership doctrine models. And I sort of, because I could never find that in any of the Army text, where does all this stuff really come from?
Yeah.
So I just did some digging and some research, and there's evolutionary principles, there's neuroscience, there's personality, there's game theory, there's complexity theory in there. So you can trace all of this stuff back to validated leadership constructs that come from academia, which I like because they're interesting, but they're not as proven as a leadership construct that's been in use for decades.
Yeah. I mean, they've probably been using this be no do model for, I don't know, maybe over 100 plus years. I don't know.
No, it's that one's fairly recent. I want to say it came
new?
out in the 80s.
Oh, really?
70s or 80s. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know Abraham Lincoln did a lot of instruction to the military to build it, and handling of prisoners, things like that we still use today. And I think even the Geneva Convention. So those who don't know what we're talking about in the audience, the be no do, the be concept, it refers to the internal character of a leader, which I have none, including their values, traits, and strengths. Again, this includes believing in yourself, your team, the mission, and being authentic. Authenticity, I think, is important too. People trust the leader that does that. Know is the skills and knowledge a leader needs, and that includes his training. Do is the activities that leaders perform. So this practicing leadership actions, taking charge when needed. I forget the military leader who leaders eat last, or
Simon Sinek.
Was it Simon Sinek? But he copied it from somebody. I think it came from.
Oh yeah.
Who was the last military general under Trump? Who kind of held it together at the end there?
Milley.
I think it came from Milley. That or it came from
maybe
one of the others. But I believe it, or it became. It was. I think it was from the guy before him who got fired. He's got a cool name, but I forget. Anyway, so yeah, the be no do, really interesting stuff there, and all the things that go into it. One of the things you talk about in your book is emotional intelligence, and that's kind of seems like that's kind of a newer thing leaders are starting to tune into, especially with the Gen Z, because they kind of want something more than just people barking orders at them. Evidently, that's what they tell me when I bark orders.
Yeah. No.
Tell us about how you feel about that, because I mean, the Army's not really the emotional huggy sort of organization. Let's touch each other and see how we feel, and that.
No, but it has evolved. I mean, you're right. There was and I can't really put my finger on it, but just generations, or every generation is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I came in the Army 30 years ago, I was perfectly comfortable being yelled at and told what to do, and that fine. This is just the construct. This is how this works, right?
Mm-hmm.
No big deal. But now, the younger soldiers they're a little more aware. They have access to literally every piece of information you could ever want. So they're a little more aware. The emotional intelligence ties into that. It's kind of being self-aware, first of all, so that you understand what you're going to, the behaviors you exhibit, whether it's body language or, actual language, are going to elicit some sort of response from the person you're directing that at. Mm-hmm. So in some circumstances, like in a crisis, if you've built your team correctly, then you can bark orders and everybody will do what they're supposed to do because they understand this is a crisis and we don't have time to dissect why are we doing this again? But for the most part, from my experience over the last probably 15 years, given that little bit of this is why we're doing it, blah, 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 but this is why the thing I'm asking you to do matters. You don't have to do that every time, but you have to do it enough so that they understand that you're coming from a place of trust, really, so that what you're doing is benign. I won't do anything that's bad for you without good reason. And really that kind of hinges on trust, which I think is the framework of leadership. But if you've set the conditions so that you've explained the why enough, eventually they just know that if you say it, they take the why as implicit. If my boss is telling me to do it, It's good. I trust them. We're just going to do it.
Yeah. And I think does it come down, I always tell people that one of the things I want to signal to my audience is that I'm a good judge, that I'm good at reading I'm a good and fair judge. Like the worst thing I can do is have someone tell me I play favorites. Like that just really rubs me the wrong way because I don't want to play favorites. I would like to that hopefully I would signal to my followers that I I'm a good judge. Analyze the situation. I'm not going to send them into suicide missions, right? Does that play into kind of what you just said?
Yeah, absolutely. So being the good judge or being the good critical thinker, or the leader that's able to get access to the right amount of information, the right data points, and then make decisions and draw conclusions from that are reasonable. And part of that is, sometimes you won't have all the data points. You can get your team together and you can tell them, hey, look, this is what I think's going on right now. Here's the data I have. Does anybody else have any more data that would be helpful for this? What do you guys think? Ultimately, like as a commander, the decision is mine, period. But we can sit here and collaborate because I'd like to hear other opinions and I'd like to hear where you guys are at. And ultimately, if you can build consensus, the buy-in and the willingness of your team to do a little bit of extra work on an idea that they had or a course of action that they had is usually far greater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting them to buy in on the why. We used to always explain the why to people in our businesses, and because we wanted them to fully understand how things operated. The one person, we used to have this rule around the office that was the only stupid question is the unasked question. Please ask questions. If you don't understand something, because the one person who slept through training is the one person who's going to break the $30,000 machine because they didn't pay attention.
That's right.
Right. And then we would always explain to them why we developed whatever the procedure was for the job, so that if they felt like they could innovate it, they could come back to us and go, I think I know some ways to do better. But yeah, getting that buy-in, having I think authenticity is a big deal in being a leader. I mean, you don't have to be perfect. You can show them sometimes when you're wounded and when you're struggling, and sometimes you need them to step up. It really makes a difference. I think it was Jim Mattis that
Mattis,
did the thing
that's
about
right.
the lunch. Didn't he? I read a couple of his books, and of course I've read a few other ones, including William McRaven. But I think Mattis was the one who would sit with the troops. Well, wasn't it? He would lunch and dine with the troops.
Oh yeah,
And
Mad Dog Mattis.
Mad Dog Mattis.
Yeah.
And I remember reading his book. One of the generals said, "Yeah, you don't have to sit with everybody. You can go to the officers' quarters or whatever." And he's like, "No, man, one of them." And that's just so important. I think as a signal to let people know. But yeah, how you signal as a leader is really important because people read stuff, and a lot of times they misread you, and so you really kind of have to follow a good hallway or a guideline of your operational awareness, I guess.
Yeah, that ties. I mean, you said authenticity a couple of times, and I agree. And that's important for young leaders to hear. It's important for young leaders, like I'm the old leader. So it's important to model that stuff. Because I remember being a young leader and thinking, man, that older leader knows everything. I never see a weakness or a chink in the armor, which of course was never the case. It's just that they hit it right. I found that being forthright with what I don't know and what I don't understand, and saying, here's what I don't know about this situation. Who can help me understand this, and just being honest about what you know and what you don't know. And because at the end of the day, like I would always tell them, I want to be part of a great organization just as much as you do. I'm the commander, but you guys affect the direction of this organization a lot more than me. So yeah, authenticity, and then being a little bit vulnerable, not to the point that you're weak, but being clear that what, hey Sergeant, I don't know anything about this thing. Can you help me understand this thing? And he's an expert; he'll help you out. But that goes a long way. To me, it goes a lot further. And even stories about like the authenticity one kind of jogged my memory, but I remember hearing leaders tell stories about, when they were in my job, how awesome they were and how here's the way I did it that was perfect. And those stories never, and maybe just me, but those stories never resonated with me. But I've had some leaders who would tell me how they failed. Hey, look, man, let me tell you how I screwed this thing up. I would listen to that. And that would be, okay, I got you. You know what I mean? So just being authentic, you're not perfect.
Yeah. Well, you can't fix the problem until you address it, right? I mean, I see a lot of people in today's world that operate in states of delusion, and their own private Idaho, whatever sort of narcissistic thing they built. Social media has really given rise to narcissism.
Yeah.
I don't know about full-blown clinical. Keep that in mind, folks. Narcissism gets kicked around a little too much. But like everyone has it. But it's definitely contributed, I think, to most people's. I mean, it's, when you have all these, you can build an audience and you have these people adulating you all day long, and, you can start buying your own supply there, doing your own supply. But it's an interesting world and how it's changing, because it used to be just like, you would tell people, hey, you want to work here, fine. If you don't, there's the door. But now you got to have really developed emotional intelligence and understanding people, understanding motivations, feeling like they're connected to you, and that things you talked about, and their transparency, authenticity. When you ask the front line or people below you as in leadership, for help, a lot of times they have knowledge. They have operational knowledge of what's going
That's
on
right.
at the front line, and there's things you can't see. And so, but seeing that, you can ask for help, that you're not breaking down. You're just going, hey, who knows? I used to ask our staff, I go, here's the concept or idea of where I think we should move forward to. What do you guys think about this? What am I not seeing? Where are my blind spots? Where are my scotomas? It seems like a great idea to me for some reason, because I'm in it, but I know there's got to be holes in it, and I can't see them because I'm too deep in it. Help me out. And so, I learned a long time ago, running businesses as a CEO, I'm not the purveyor of all the greatest ideas. And so many times I need people in my organization to throw those ideas out, and also for them to have a safety, an emotional intelligence safety area where they won't get, I won't be like, you're stupid. What's that idea you came up with? That's the dumbest idea in the world, and shame people. And they're like, I'm never getting an idea again because I saw what happened there. So
that's right. And you've got to cultivate that, because most people, I want to say most, there's a lot of people who would be intimidated to sort of voice an idea if they don't feel safe. Like you said, that emotional safety net, being emotionally intelligent about that. But making an environment where it's safe to fail. And there's, you as the leader will accept the risk. Hey, that's a great idea. We're going to do that. But nobody's going to all point fingers at you for failing. I will accept that risk. The company is going to buy that risk. It's a good idea. And then kind of people see that. So you cultivate that sort of environment where people are willing to speak up and sometimes even question you. Hey, Chris, I think I have a better idea. Why don't we try it like this? And if you're good, you'll listen to your team until they give you a reason not to. But I think that pushes a company so much further.
Oh yeah, makes all the difference in the world. And then on the website we had for you, is it? Let's see, where did I put it? Is it summaryleadership.com?
Yeah, summaryleadership.com.
Okay. And then, so tell us about some of the. I guess you do consulting there as well. I see schedule free consult.
Yeah, I'm playing around with it right now. I don't. I mean, if I happen to get someone on there, I will. But right now, like I said, I've got a couple years left in the military. So what I'm doing right now is kind of exploring how I'm going to do what I love doing, which is coaching leadership and teaching leadership, really to sort of younger folks that are at that transition period where they've been put into a leadership position. They've seen that there's, a massive amount of variables they have to play with, and then want to sit down and understand, how to turn themselves into the best leader that they can be. So the website's kind of it's forward facing. It's a little bit about me. I've got a blog on there where there's tons of articles on there that I've written, and I'm really playing around with ideas, playing around with leadership constructs, looking at where I want to source my models from. And I've already hit it, but the 5 big theories: evolution, personality, neuroscience, game theory, and complexity, all tie into this. I'm working on kind of a survey, sort of. I don't know if you've heard of there's a Hogan personality assessment. There's DISC assessments. It's sort of like those, but it's a takeaway that I can give to a leader and say, look, based on your assessment, here's what, is that me? There we go.
No, I can hear you. I'm just pulling up leader assessment test here.
I was getting some static there. Sorry.
Okay.
So anyway, spit out a survey, tell you, hey, you're these characteristics about you. You should highlight this. So these circumstances are when your skills and characteristics will be best leveraged. And then understanding the team, the nature and the characteristics of the team is really important, because a lot of times we do surveys that help us understand ourselves. But you really need to understand all the people that work for you too. Go ahead.
There you go. Damon, your microphone's mucking up. Is there a cell phone close to it?
Yeah, there is.
That was it. It was the signal.
Fixed it?
Yep, fixed it. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Carry on.
Yep. But anyway, working on that survey with a lot of different theories kind of muddled into there. I don't know how many months that's going to take me, but it's consuming a lot of my time.
There you go. Well, we'll look forward to seeing, because I mean, watching the Ukraine war firsthand, roll out, and watching the Russian military structure, and just seeing it just throwing bodies into a meat grinder, really.
Yeah.
And seeing how their tier of management works compared to ours. I mean, you just really like, I think it's more succinct for me in my brain, or more sharper in my brain, because I grew up believing the Russian army was the second greatest army in the world next to ours. And, I used to cower under a desk, to save myself from the nuclear bombs. We all did that, right? So I grew up with the USSR, and I grew up believing that, they were number 2. And to watch how they've just played out in Ukraine is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then the innovation of the Ukrainians, I mean, whoever would have thought, fuck $1 million tanks, it's all just $10 drones or something you buy on the shelf. Like,
that's right.
What a change in, I mean, this is probably the biggest change in war tactics since, I don't know, Patton or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird thing that the war brings out the best in human innovation, just because it's life or death, right? We've got here's all the money you need, fix this problem.
Yeah.
I saw it myself in Iraq. Soldiers were coming up with, if you could weld and you could get metal, you could build something. And, that was the new TTP for, getting around IEDs or whatever. So it's just, it's an interesting playground for inventing stuff.
Yeah. And maybe we should just have more wars then. I don't know. Let's not do that.
There's got to be a better way.
Let's try and keep the peace. I mean, I like it when we kind of have a peaceful detente. Sometimes those are better, I suppose. But yeah. So, do you have any anticipation of launch dates on the upcoming books?
So the next one's called "You Don't Know Shit About Leadership," and I'm shooting for I love that title.
I do.
I'm shooting
for
the.
Funny as hell.
I'm shooting for the end of January for that one, and then I've got 1.5 more. So I'll try to space them out, because I've had a lot of time. I've been writing a lot, and I've got I'm halfway ADD, so I can do more than one book at a time, which sounds crazy, but that's just how my brain works.
Yeah, I have the ADHD disease as well. They call it the CEO disease. So
yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's a tremendous tool. I don't think I would ever have been successful without it. But the downsides are quite fun too. So you have to kind of manipulate those. I thought I got my ADHD completely under control in my old age. And I was slowing down and just calming down. And but then I started testosterone replacement treatment a year ago in November. Man, that came back, and
Kicked it back
squirrel,
in.
squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. I mean, I have to just apply myself every day to try and quit going, quit looking at 50,000 YouTube videos and flip between
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. Like try and focus. So there you go, squirrel. Anyway, give us your final thoughts as we go out. Tell people how they can reach out to you and onboard you in the future as you develop your coaching and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'll stay at summaryleadership.com. I just want to say, the reason I'm writing these books and the reason I want to publish is because I know there are tons of leaders out there
Mm-hmm.
who are pretty good or don't even know if they're good or not,
Mm-hmm.
but can certainly live up to a higher potential. And it's just going to take some simplistic language to show you where your potential lies and why you have the characteristics you have, why you exhibit the behavior traits you do exhibit, to sort of understand that a little better, build yourself up, and become the leader with full potential that you already have in you.
Mm, there you go. It's people need to learn these things. A lot of times, one of the problems we would have is we'd have really great salesmen, and they were really great at sales, but man, they made awful leaders and a lot of times they're not prepared or trained to do it.
Mhm.
I assumed a lot of time, well, they've been hanging out with me long enough, they've seen what I do, but maybe I'm a shitty leader. That's why they never succeeded. But
No,
sometimes
yeah.
salespeople just don't make management. It's two different brain modes.
Well, that's in the next book, right?
There you go.
There's things like the Peter principle is
Mm-hmm.
like, you have a skill that makes you stand out at a certain level. Eventually, you're going to get promoted to a level where that skill no longer matters. If you're good at sales, it doesn't necessarily translate into management or anything like that. So it's a fairly common concept.
There you go. And nowadays, I mean, the more training you can have, what kind of leader am I? What does it mean? I ask a lot of leaders, CEOs, when I interview them. I'll be like, "What's your leadership style? What do you do?" And they really have no awareness of what they do. They've just been kind of doing. They have
Mhm.
patterns and tools that they use, like I do, and they've just been doing them over and over to a point that they don't really think about them much. So they really don't have
Well,
a self
yeah,
awareness of it. Yeah.
man, I would say you're right, and I've tried to coach junior leaders on this too.
Mm-hmm.
If you can codify your leadership, you have to sit down and kind of think about it
Mm-hmm.
and codify it. That's really important. A, because it keeps you consistent, and B, because at some point you're going to have the opportunity to coach someone who works for you how to be a better leader.
Mm-hmm.
So at least you've thought your way through why you are the way you want to be, what your values are, what your priorities are, and how you exhibit the right behaviors to get that out of other people. They may not be the same type of leader as you, but if you help them understand how you built your leadership framework, then they can sort of build their own leadership framework and become better through that.
There you go. I mean, that's the way to do it. It's any more better tools people can get to be developed leaders. Whenever people fail, I ask myself, how did I fail them?
Hmm.
Um, did I not train them enough? Did I fail in communication? Did I fail to set a good example as a leader, moral compass? And I take a lot of that back to us. A lot of times someone failed in our trainings because we didn't train them well.
Hmm.
Maybe we left something off the table. Maybe our communication wasn't succinct. You know, but I take responsibility for that. I mean, even though sometimes it's probably pretty clear they're not the best people or they have some ethical problems and moral problems. But even then, I'm like, how did they get in our organization? Why did
Yeah.
we developed different ways when we were hiring to where it used to be you meet with them and hire them on the spot. Um, then we switched to like interviews, like 3 or 4 interviews, so we could really get to know them, and kind of they would kind of let their guard down too over 3 or 4
That's
interviews,
right. That's right.
and you kind of find out they'd show up on the third interview in pajamas with flip flops, and they'd have their feet up on your desk, and you're like, oh well, you're comfortable. Tell us your stories. We need to know not to hire you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I think as a leader, I think you look at failure within your team and your organization. At least I do. You tell me, and I ask myself, what could I have done better as a leader? How did I fail my men or my team or my crew, whatever?
Yeah. I think that's the starting point for every failure is,
Hmm.
is you. Like, okay, I'm going to start with me. I'm never going to assume malevolence or ignorance or, lack of skill before I examine, what did I do to make sure that we didn't fail.
Yeah.
And honestly, it makes you a better person because, like you said, now you revise your techniques on hiring. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's take it second and third order out. Okay, did we hire the right person? Okay, we did. Did we train them properly? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Let's just take a look at our training real quick and see if we can isolate the variable that caught this person up and caused them to fail. And maybe it is the person. But to me, it seems like a much more productive technique to go back and do some introspection, look at your whole process first. So that, because it's too easy just to blame the person and say that person's an idiot, fire them, which is probably not the case.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the only time we pull the fire is if it's a moral thing. Someone stole from us.
Yeah.
Stuff like use those. I'm pretty sure I didn't teach you to steal from me. That's your thing.
Yeah.
I actually, one of my favorite stories is I was sitting in my office and I own 51% of the corporations that me and my partner owned. He owned 49, but they were C corps. And we had offices in Denver, Vegas, Ogden, Utah, and Salt Lake City. And I remember one time one of my sales guys who was new, he came popping into my office. He was so excited, and I was busy working on something. He goes, hey, I figured out a way to get set up an office at home. I've been telling people about it. I'm like, oh, really? What is it? He goes, hey, there's a room in the back, and it's filled with office supplies. And so if you want to set up your home office, you go in there and just take the stuff that's in there.
Oh.
And I'm sitting there watching I'm feeling my head start to crank around, kind of like that girl in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, so we're putting on a joke on me because we did a lot of jokes around the office, and I'm like, are you for real? He goes, yeah, you just go back there, and I'm like, you realize that you're stealing from me? And he goes, no, this is a big corporation. It's a faceless corporation. There's no one doing the thing. And I'm like, you clearly don't understand how any of this works. I own 51% of this company.
Yeah.
And half that money is mine and the other half is my partner's, and I'm a steward of this corporation. And he still didn't get it. And, I fired him on the spot, of course. But just the level of just ignorance and, I don't know.
That's amazing.
Like, and that was the other thing I told him. I go, do you understand this is theft? And he goes, no, it's not. It's a corporation. It's faceless. It's crimeless.
Still,
like, you don't steal stuff from the office.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's sort of malevolence, I guess. Maybe I don't know if that's the right word, but
I don't know. Yeah, malevolence with ignorance, I guess.
There's a certain point where you can't fix stupid. So there you go.
That's right.
There you go. Well, Colonel, it's been wonderful to have you on. We love having military leaders on because you guys, at least in the American leaders, are trained so well. Maybe we should have some. I think we've had some European military folks on. Yeah, we've had some people from French. I think from the CIA. I think it was. They're MI6 and stuff, and I think we've had some ex-MI6 people on the show. We love talking to you guys, so thank you for your service and all you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Folks, order up the books where fine books are sold. It's out December 1st, 2024. The Leadership Incompetence Index, Root Causes, Red Flags, and Remedies for Learning Leaders. And the one thing you learn as a leader, or you should be at as a leader, you should be constantly learning. You should be constantly checking your six and making sure what I like to call the crazy Ivans from Red October. You should be checking your six and making sure that your butt doesn't stink, basically, and you're walking your talk and talking your walk. Did I do that right? No. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTok and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.